here we are. We're back
Thanks for round
with
two.
Quentin Angus.
Quentin Angus, yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, and Andrew Swift. And we were interviewing Andrew Swift, and Quentin showed up, and I didn't have it written down in my calendar. So we've now got two people here. I screwed up. So it's turned into a little bit of a jazz party.
Australian
on
jazz.
A Monday afternoon, Australian jazz party on a Monday afternoon, and we've been reminiscing about the Australian jazz scene in Canberra and Sydney. Yeah, and so Quentin, you haven't been in New York for very long. When did you get here?
I got here in the fall of 2010. So yeah, I guess I've been here for 2.5 years.
And for our Australian viewers, the fall is autumn.
Yes, autumn. So I arrived in August 2010.
And you went straight to music school?
I did. I arrived about a week beforehand because I didn't want to arrive and go to school straight away. I also wanted to get over my jet lag, so I spent a week or a week and a half in Manhattan and just went and saw a bunch of shows. And then I started going to school at Purchase College.
And did you come to audition beforehand, or?
I did come to audition beforehand. I came in, I guess it would have been, when was it? 2009, around March. That's when they have the auditions for the fall admission. And so yeah, I came then, and I spent a month in New York actually, and that was one of the first times I actually came just to audition. To see if I would get in, but also just to see what it was like here, and because I had really no idea, and that was one of the first moments when I decided that I really needed to be here after spending a month here and checking out music, and it really seemed like an amazing place to be. So and then so that was in March 2009, and then I had to defer for a year while I got the funding together to be able to come in the fall of 2010.
Were you studying in Adelaide at the time when you did this, or what were you doing? How old were you then?
I was 22, I think. Yeah, about
2009.
2009, I had just turned 21. So yeah, when I started studying at Purchase, I was 22.
And had you been studying in Adelaide at the time?
I had been studying in Adelaide. I did my degree at the University of Adelaide, and then I did honours after that.
In Adelaide?
In Adelaide, yeah.
So you studied for 4 years or something?
Exactly right.
And you have a Bachelor of Music degree from the Adelaide, I think, and then you did an honours year. Is that right?
Exactly.
And then so you're doing, or you did your Masters at Purchase, or?
Yeah, I completed my Masters in May last year at Purchase College.
And that's the end of your study for you at the moment, do you think?
Well, no, it's a little bit of. I'm still studying at the moment. I've almost completed my doctorate. So the story behind it is in 2009, when I came over here to audition, I went back to Australia and I didn't have enough funding to accept my offers to come over here and study. And so I started doing a Masters in Australia, which was kind of like my backup plan. And so I was studying there, and after, I guess, a year and a half of doing that, I had enough funding to come over here and study. And so I said to my supervisors, look, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, I've got to go. And I had almost finished a Masters, and so what they said was, there's no point having 2 Masters degrees, like you're not going to come back after doing a Masters to complete your Masters. So what they suggested at the time was you should upgrade to a doctorate, and they thought my topic was big enough to do that. So I did an upgrade presentation to a panel of professors and the other students, and it was accepted. And then so the idea was, it seemed like so far into the future that I just said yes, but the idea was to go over, do my Masters, and then come back to complete my doctorate. And yeah, I've essentially done that, but I've stayed over here. So I've just been doing it. I'm on study leave at the moment, and I'm just communicating with my supervisors via email and doing all of the work and recordings over here, which obviously makes sense. So,
what's your topic?
My topic, the quick explanation is that it's about rhythm and polyrhythm, but in particular, I used both John Abercrombie, but mainly Gilad Hexelman as, I guess, my points of data that I analysed, and I've transcribed all of Gilad Hexelman's albums. He has four albums now. There's one that's actually going to come out tomorrow, and I transcribed the solos before the album came out so that it can be released at the same time. And so that was my data that I analysed, and I came up with a list of all of his different devices that he uses, displacements and different polyrhythms and things like that, and how he uses it with counterpoint, and so I've used that in my own playing, but I've also tried to develop those concepts in somewhat of a personal thing as well. So yeah, that's basically what it is. But it's a doctorate in performance. So I have to do 4 CDs, 4 60-minute CDs, and I'm just about to record one at the end of the month, and then that'll be like 3 or 3.5, and then so yeah, I've almost finished. So there's the recorded part as well as the sort of analysis that I was explaining before.
And you're just about to go on tour in Australia.
Yes,
with a band and a lot of people, Americans, right?
Yep.
Bass player from Adelaide and...
Yeah, bass player from Adelaide, Lyndon Gray, and then myself on guitar, my housemate Matthew Sheens, who's a wonderful Australian pianist, and then the 2 people who are actually American residents, or citizens rather, Kenneth Salters, fantastic drummer, and Chad Lefkowitz-Brown on saxophone. So...
Did Chad study at Purchase? Or
he didn't. He actually, he did the Brubeck Institute. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of that, but it's kind of like, it's sort of like the Monk Institute, but for an undergraduate thing. So it's a very selective crowd. They just pick one band. And then the idea is, I think you do 1 or 2 years there, and then you go and finish off your degree at another school. So he did 1 or 2 years there, and then he went to the new school.
Right.
But yeah, he hasn't continued with like postgraduate stuff because he seems to already have enough work. So yeah.
And so did you make some musical relationships with people at Purchase?
I did. When I first got here, I guess it was really, really good. One of the reasons why I wanted to study here was because you're automatically put into a scene, and there's musicians around you and they're doing the same thing. And so initially, most of my connections were with people from Purchase, and when I started doing gigs, I would hire my friends from school and stuff like that. And I still play with a few of the people from Purchase. Like there's a trumpet player called John Raymond, who's doing great things at the moment. He's from Purchase, and also there was a pianist called Youngju Song, a Korean pianist, who's doing really great things now. And she was also she was actually in a composition class of mine with John Abercrombie, and so yeah, it was great to be able to make connections with.
So he's teaching there, is he, John Abercrombie?
He is, yeah. That was the reason why I chose the school. So there are a few different reasons of choosing schools, like scholarships and prices of schools and stuff like that. But what really struck me when I started looking into the schools was when you looked at the guitar faculty, quite often they didn't really have that many sort of good people there. But Purchase College had both Abercrombie and another guy called Randy Johnston, who I also studied with. They're kind of polar opposites in terms of concepts, but so they both of those players drew me to Purchase.
And when did you start playing the guitar?
I started playing when I was 4 years old. I don't remember it, but apparently because my mum is a pianist. She's a music teacher, and my dad used to play bass in bands. I remember that when I was a kid. I used to go and check him out playing. He played in cover bands and stuff like that functions and weddings.
Cool.
And so apparently they told me I could play an instrument and I could pick any instrument I wanted. And so I said guitar, and I do remember having lessons. The first guitar teacher I had was a guy called Phil Kelso, and I played classical guitar actually for years and years until I went to high school. And I didn't learn how to read music. It was all just him showing me things, and then I would sort of learn these things. So I didn't know chords or like any of the notes on the instrument. And then
Can you still remember them?
Yes, some of them I can.
Can you play one?
Can I play one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can.
Can you try?
I could.
I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not a test, but
We'll be sending it to John.
Yeah. Yeah, so one of the pieces, I think it was one of the first pieces, sort of, because I started learning songs just on like the thick E string, and then I progressed to things like, and then I remember, because he was a classical guitar teacher, he wanted to then get these fingers working, and one of the first pieces that I learned was just getting the high E string in there, etc., etc., and then you would start putting in some of the other strings as well. So those kind of things. So that was
nice?
called Spanish studies.
Right.
Thank you.
So no, that's enough.
So,
that's enough
yeah.
guitar playing. I don't want
So
this to
yeah,
be
I
a
definitely
gig.
Instructional.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hot licks.
But yeah, I definitely in
Freaking
my
hot licks.
in my own guitar teaching, I still use some of those things because I feel like that's the best way to begin playing a musical instrument. Is you just want to play and you just want to observe people, and then so yeah, I definitely don't think that was a bad thing, but it was hard for me to then go and learn
to read.
Yeah, to read after that. I didn't see the point or why I should do it, or
I think you guys should both come closer, actually.
Okay.
There you go. That's better.
So how did you make the connection then, like with reading, like, because that's always something that's fascinated me, like knowing people that really play by ear and then they want to learn how to read. Like, how do you teach somebody who's
More water
only
for me.
played by ear?
Yeah.
Sorry. Uh-oh.
Oh, oh no.
Professional.
Professional.
There we go.
Yeah, I think to answer that question, I actually only became good at reading notation when I was going to university, because obviously to audition to get into the course you have to be able to you have to be able to read, and I could read, not very well, but I could read enough to get through an audition. But I found that I really needed that skill as soon as I started studying there, because people like we'd have ensembles, people would bring in original tunes and you'd have to be able to play things, or I was in a guitar band instead of a big band because my reading wasn't that good, and all of the parts were obviously written out in music, and just all of the information and everything that you had to communicate with was in this language of music notation. So I soon saw that it was important, and then just practiced it a lot, and then it didn't take long because I was immersed in it every day.
So it was just the actual physically doing it, like just forcing yourself to sit there and be like, I'm going to play F.
Exactly, totally. And my guitar teacher at the time, Colin Elmer, had a lot of, because I think guitarists are notorious for not knowing how to read, and so he had a lot of really kind of creative exercises that he had made up to get you to learn the notes and to be able to read better, and so that definitely helped.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
And so, when did you hit jazz music?
I heard jazz. I guess just before I started university. So when I was only, I guess pretty late. I was probably about 15 or 16. And so I first heard it. My brother, who's just a little bit older than me, he went to university and he was a great drummer. And I essentially just copied him because I always wanted to be. I was never as good as him growing up. He was always much better at music, and I just wanted to copy what he was doing, and I thought it was really, really cool. So when he went and did the jazz course, I started listening to it a little bit then, and learnt a little bit about it. And then, when I started studying, I developed, somewhere along the line, I developed a real strong passion for it and just really, really enjoyed it and couldn't get enough. So, yeah.
And is he still playing the drums now?
He is still playing the drums.
In Adelaide?
Yep, in Adelaide.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I don't know much about Adelaide. I haven't spent much time there. Other than I know musicians who come from there a lot, but I've only played there once in 1992 and once in 2009.
Wow.
And never been there since.
Are you going back on this trip coming up?
I don't know. I don't think so. I can't remember. I don't know. Yeah. It's a hard place to get people to come out to a gig. There's not a lot of people there.
Yeah, I think that...
it's a small town, really.
Yeah, there's people like Mike Stewart, who we were mentioning before. He, in my personal experience of the music scene in Adelaide, he was one of the saviours of that, because when I was going through, there were gigs here and there. There were like some regular gigs where people like Chris Sewell would be playing, and as kind of local heroes playing. But when Mike returned from New York, because he went to Purchase College as well, he was just organising stuff all the time, and now he's the director of Jazz SA and puts on all of these performances, and he has the Mike Stewart Big Band, and he's organised a youth big band, and he's just really pushing hard to make something there. So I feel like there is actually a healthy scene going on there at the moment. We also have Coma, Creative Original Music Adelaide, which was created around the time that I started going to university by people like Chris Martin and Lyndon Gray, and it's still going strong now. So there definitely is stuff. It's not as pronounced as the other major cities in Australia, but yeah. And I feel like I'm not sure what it was like before that, so that's only my experience of it.
Yeah, it's hard for me to comment. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I went there with the funk band in 1992. And back then, one half of Hindley Street was really a no-go zone, like very, very rough place full of bikies, and you didn't go there. So it's, but then the other side was very genteel. It's always had a very sort of genteel atmosphere to it. Adelaide, you know.
Definitely.
People have an English accent, and it's polite, and you know, it's charming.
Yeah,
the architecture's nice. And, you know.
People always think over here they say, like, Americans or people from other countries are like, oh, so you're from London or something, or you're from England.
You said the word solo when you were talking about Hexamen, and you said solo. So
okay,
it's interesting the juxtaposition of you and Andrew, whose accents swung a little bit towards the American accent. So it's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I've still got the exact same accent as when I left Australia. The only thing I've changed a little bit, like if I'm ordering a sandwich and I want tomatoes, I'll say tomatoes. And stuff like that, just so I can be understood better, because quite often people get really confused. So yeah, a few things like that, but I still say it with an Australian accent. So
if I'm talking on the phone to someone and I'm ordering food, and I'm talking to some Mexican person whose English isn't their first language on the other side of the phone, then everything's becomes very American at that point. You know, or if I'm talking to a computer on if I'm on hold, representative, please. Yeah. You know, then I bang it on.
Yeah, that's been hard for me, even just with, I can't remember specific examples, but when you're talking to a computer, and it's not programmed for your accent, and you're trying to say your address or something, and it just doesn't understand you. So yeah, I should try that, talking in an American accent.
Sometimes
and
it
then,
helps.
yeah.
Sometimes not. So you tell me. So you're already playing the guitar, and were you inspired by guitarists or sax players or trumpet players or piano players? When you were young, but like we're talking about like when you went to. I'm talking about when you were in first year at the music school in Adelaide. What were you listening to then?
Well, actually, yeah. When I
assume it wasn't Gilhart Hexel.
No, it definitely wasn't. Yeah, when I first started, I guess I had quite a lot of different. I still listen to a lot of different types of music. I think it's a bit sterile if you just stay in one genre, as I'm sure you guys know. But yeah, I was really into at that time drum and bass actually, and I used to because I was really into the party scene when I was that age, and I'd go to raves and stuff. And I remember, I was really into making drum and bass and composing my own original music on the computer. And I used a lot of different programs like Reason and Logic and stuff like that. And I should go back and check out some of that, because I don't have any of that music still on because it's on one of my old computers or something. But I spent quite a lot of years invested in that. So yeah, there was that. And in terms of guitar, because I didn't really infuse my guitar playing with that, it was just a thing by itself. In terms of guitar, I was into shred guitar and stuff like Joe Satriani and Steve Vai and Yngwie Malmsteen and all of those guys. So yeah, when I first started, I was definitely not a jazz guitarist. It took a while for that to come out. Yeah.
It's interesting. So when you were in first year at the con, you were listening to Joe Satriani?
Yeah.
And then Mike Stewart said, "Son,
yeah.
Let me tell you something. You're dealing with the devil.
Yeah.
Here is the text. Here's the mantra.
Yeah.
Here's anthropology, my son.
You should wait for it.
Learn this.
Right.
Memorize this." Is that what happened, or?
Essentially.
Or the other students, did they influence you? Or?
Yeah, I think the other students did influence me, but probably the thing that I can remember that was definitely a turning point was my guitar teacher at the time was giving me a lot of music. He was going, so okay, this is stuff you should be checking out. And I remember distinctly some people that I went through huge phases of really liking and still like now, people like Schofield and Matheny, my teacher gave to me, and I listened to it and I didn't like it because my ears weren't attuned to that and I didn't understand, and it sounded like they were just playing, especially when they played fast, it sounded random and kind of very strange to my ears, and I didn't like it. And so he kept feeding me different things until we finally found something that I liked. And the first thing that I liked was Wes Montgomery, and I guess because it's he plays a lot of groovy, really nice stuff with his octaves, and plays a lot of riff based solos as well as the single note lines. And so that was definitely my keyhole into jazz, because after I really got into Wes, I have like 15 albums or something of his, and I was super into it. And then from that I progressed into lots of other guys, including the two I just mentioned. So yeah,
guitar, sort of interesting about guitar to me is just the broad range of ways that you can use your right hand to play the guitar.
Yes. Yeah.
And I noticed that you came from using all your fingers.
Mm-hmm.
So when you were shredding, would you just use the pick and?
Exactly. Yeah. When I was
picking when you were shredding.
Yes. Yeah.
And not using your other fingers at all.
Exactly.
Just the pick.
Yep. Just the pick.
And then have you now re-examined using your other fingers to play the guitar again?
Yeah. Now I use.
Wes just used his thumb.
Exactly.
Right?
Wes just used his thumb. I did try that at some point, but I felt like so first of all, I have no idea. For octaves, it's good using your thumb, and it's a nice sound, and it seems achievable. But I have absolutely no idea how he played the single, like the eighth note lines with just a thumb, that it does not make any sense to me. So yeah, so now I use
visited by angels.
Yeah, that's the only explanation. That's what it must be. So now I use a hybrid of both. Sometimes I will play with just my fingers. I often compose songs which use finger picking and other techniques other than just the pick. But yeah, when I'm playing, I'll sort of go from using a pick and fingers to just using a pick, or putting the pick away and just using my fingers. I try and use all of it. So
did you talk to teachers about that concept in Australia or in America? Or
I didn't, but
you figured out yourself.
Yeah, I guess it was something I figured out myself. But the first time I sort of really realized that it was something that an avenue that I should explore was when I saw James Muller for the first time, which was, I think, when I was in first year at the university. He came and did a gig with his trio, and it was one of the most amazing things I had ever seen in terms of what was possible on the guitar. I had never seen anyone do anything.
Or Tim Firth?
I think Tim Firth, yeah.
And Brett Hurst?
Yep. And I noticed that he was playing with his fingers and a pick.
What year is this? 2003 or?
I guess, or maybe like 2005. Okay. I think, yeah, 2005. And I had a lesson with him because he came to the university and did some lessons, and I asked him about that. And he said that he had never practiced anything in particular to get that going, but just that it was an option, and why wouldn't you utilize it? He said that it made other things available that would be impossible if you were just using your fingers or just using a pick. So I guess just from that initial, just knowing that was a thing that you could do, I started exploring that as an option of playing the guitar.
So no one else. Have you studied with anyone other than at Purchase? Have you had? I mean, has Gillard given you a lesson for?
Yeah, I've studied with quite a few people since I've been here. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I was really, so when I first got here, I was really into the, I guess, like modern guys who are around on the scene. So I had a lesson with, or a few lessons with Gillard. I've had a lesson with Adam Rogers and Jonathan Kreisberg. I had lessons with Randy Johnston, obviously Lage Lund. Who else am I forgetting? I had a lesson with Pat Martino. He's not really one of the modern guys, but
he lives down in Philly or something.
He lives in Philly.
Down to his house, or?
I did go down to his house. Yeah, that was actually, that's definitely a story, because I when I was doing honours at the conservatory, you have to do a thesis at the end of the year, and that's kind of like your project, and then you do a recital based off of that. And my thesis was on Pat Martino's playing, and so I was a huge Pat Martino fan, and I got to meet him and go to his house. And first of all, he's a really, really little guy, very small, very thin, and you could actually see, I'm not sure if you guys know, do you know what happened with how he had like a brain aneurysm? The quick story is he was a professional jazz guitarist, had released quite a few records, and then he had a brain aneurysm and had to be operated on, and he forgot how to play, like he forgot who he was and how to play the guitar and everything like that, and he had to go through this rehabilitation process. He said he went back and lived with his parents. And I remember talking to him about this. He said that he was just everything was starting to come back, and he knew that he played guitar, and his dad would always play him records of him and say, "Look, this is you, listen," and he hated it and he thought it sounded horrible. But then after a while, after a while, he got back into it and started playing guitar again, and it's really amazing because he sounds the same as he always did. He got back to what he was doing, and so that was a pretty inspiring thing to know that someone, because I think he lost about 2 to 5 years in his career or something like that while he was getting back on track. So, but anyway, you can actually see there's a little concave in his head from where he had the surgery. But such an amazing spirit, being in the presence of someone like that. It could have been because I was just totally in awe But yeah, an amazing person. It was really, really great, and getting to jam with him was ridiculous.
Wow.
So yeah,
That's cool.
yeah.
So, I mean, it says it's a random, strange question, but if you could change the way that music was taught in the school in Adelaide, what would you change? Is there anything you...
Is that a loaded question?
Yeah.
Sorry, a loaded question, difficult question, but is there, having had all the experience of being at Purchase and studying with all of those people, is there something you wish that you'd been taught, or...?
That's a good question. I think,
has your
a lot of...
been conferred yet?
Yeah, it's been conferred. Yeah, I feel like I shouldn't go into it too much, but yeah, I think a lot of things. The program there has been going for quite a while, under the direction of the same people, and it hasn't really changed much or grown to incorporate new things. So I would say, and there's a lot of good things going on there as well, but definitely taking into account composition as more of a main part of the course, and then also reassessing what songs, because we have a tunes list that you learn each semester and stuff like that, and I think reassessing what tunes you're learning and why, and maybe putting some other repertoire in there would be good. And I could think of a bunch of things, but
I mean, did you learn any Australian music?
That's true. No, we didn't learn any Australian music. No.
Has your impression of music in Australia changed? Or the music you grew up with? Are you more fond of Cold Chisel than when you left, or whatever it is that was Australian, or haven't really thought about that?
I haven't thought. I guess I haven't been over here long enough for that. But I think definitely I miss the lifestyle in Australia as opposed to here. So yeah, not speaking. But I haven't thought that much about the musical aspects. So
has your impression of New York changed? I mean, like when you the music that's here, like what's different about it now that you're sort of surrounded by it than what your impression of it was when you were a kid in Adelaide with a guitar?
I think it's definitely so first of all, when I first moved here, I had this impression in my mind that when I went to Purchase College, I was going to be the worst musician there by a long shot. I thought everyone was going to be ridiculously amazing, and it was a very sort of overwhelming experience in a way to come here, and I was quite scared because I didn't know what it was going to be like, and especially after I mentioned before, I spent a month in New York checking out gigs, and because those kind of performances only come to Australia and Adelaide very, very rarely, it's always such an event whenever a big name person comes there. I had very, very high expectations, so I think that has definitely changed, because when I got there, I would say overall, because there's just such a high concentration of population and good musicians and people coming from all over, overall the standard is definitely higher, but it wasn't as big a deal as I thought it was going to be. So that's definitely changed. And I guess the other thing, when I first came over here and saw people play, it was my mind got blown every single time I saw a concert, and it was just, it was overwhelming to see the amount of talent and amount of good musicians that there are. But I definitely don't feel like I'm numb to it, but it doesn't happen as often now when I go out, and it's like a life-changing experience because I'm just surrounded by it all the time. It's just good people playing everywhere all the time. So I guess that's, my perception of New York has definitely changed.
So do you feel like your goals changed? I mean, did you what were your aspirations when you came? Were you just sort of thinking, I'm just going to do a degree, or?
Yeah, definitely. When I first left Australia, all I knew was that I was going to come here, and I just wanted to do a degree and get better, and study with Abercrombie. I was really excited for that, and I think when I first left, I sort of saw myself coming back to Australia, especially since I had my study to come back and finish off, I sort of envisioned myself coming back after those 2 years. But yeah, that definitely changed. Yeah.
And you've put out a CD and you've used a publicist and you've really sort of taken the bull by the horns, so to speak, in quite a short amount of time. Wouldn't you say? I mean, that's what that's my perception of you as someone who's kind of really jumped into the ring. You know?
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Yeah,
Did your personality change? Were
I
you
think
that sort of person when you were in Australia?
Well, I think I was always I always worked hard, and I was always organised and stuff like that. Like different bands, I played at one of the most fun gigs I had in Australia. I played in a band called Mr. Goodnight, which was just it was kind of like a funk soul band, and I'd get to solo all the time, and so I really enjoyed helping organise that. And writing set lists and helping with writing songs and things like that, but I never did anything as a leader. I had some kind of thing stopping me where I was sort of maybe scared to do that, and I didn't feel like that was something that I should do. And after moving to New York, so I went from doing a lot of gigs and playing all the time, again, nothing as a leader, but playing a lot. And I came to
Adelaide.
In Adelaide, yeah, in Adelaide.
Kind of every night of the week, or
I'd say maybe like 3 or 4 times a week, something like that. Because I was studying at the same time. Sometimes more depending on what was going on. A lot of work doing functions and weddings and things like that as well. And we had a regular gig at the Hilton. Is that what it was? Yeah, the Hilton Hotel.
Was that your experience, Andrew? Like, were you working in Canberra 3 or 4 times a week before you left?
Not usually. I mean, I was doing a lot of function gigs, like weddings and stuff. No, I wouldn't say it would have been three.
You've also become a band leader here. Do you think you would have become a band leader if you'd stayed in Australia?
Probably, because I mean, I was always into writing and I used to write a lot. Yeah, so probably the short answer would be yes.
Yeah, I just remembered what I was going to finish off my train of thought. So when I came to New York, I was doing no playing, basically, like literally no playing. Apart from at school, people were doing sessions, a lot of sessions, and so then I started thinking that maybe I should do something myself, since I wasn't working, and I decided to, I guess, take it into my own hands, and I started doing simple things. Like, I think the first thing was building my own website, and doing things like that, and getting stuff organized so that I could start booking shows, and then that led to making CDs and other things like that, and putting together tours, and it all sort of snowballed from there. But it was definitely coming here and thinking, okay, if I want to do something, I've got to do it myself. So I started
I think that's one thing that I really just had observed about you, and I found actually like really impressive, was the fact that you were just willing to, like, you know, it always seemed like you had something in the works, you know, like you kind of had a tour going, or, you know, I thought that was really, really cool, especially like as Sean said, you haven't been here for like a long time, you know. So
did you get any instruction into the music business when you were in Adelaide?
That's a
was
good
it
question.
different when you went to Purchase?
It was different, but the music business side of things, I've had a lot of discussions with people about this, and I still firmly believe that there should be some kind of guidance in schools. And I know that it's constantly changing, and nowadays with like Facebook and YouTube and Twitter, it's a completely different world. But I think there should be some kind of course that kind of adapts to those things and helps people out, because definitely I personally had no idea what I was doing when I left Adelaide, and even when I came to New York to begin with, in terms of organizing those things. So it was, any learning that I did was from other friends who were booking gigs, I'd talk to them about how they were doing things, or other people who had websites and different things organized, and even other teachers. I've talked to Abercrombie about his career and how he made things work, and obviously it's very different now than when he was coming up, but yeah, there doesn't seem that kind of things. It seems like you have to work harder to get the information than how to play the instrument, basically. So
the thing for me, so I'm just raving now, but the thing that I miss personally is in Sydney there was work around, and if you could get to a certain level, there was 5 or 10 people that could play the piano really well, and I was one of those people, right? There was 5 or 10 of us, and there was work around, and pretty soon you would get to work with anyone. Like, you almost got to work with everyone. It was almost the nature of the business meant that, you almost, chances are Vince Jones is going to call you, or that you're going to get the best gig, because there were only so many people that really had the skills, and you were going to get opportunities, and if you screwed the opportunities up, it didn't matter, because the opportunities would come again, because by the nature of the fact that people would have a gig, and Matt McMahon's working, Kevin Hunt's working, Paul Mack's working, they've had a fight with this person, this person didn't show up last time, and even though you'd screwed the gig up in some way, you were going to get hired again. But in New York, I feel like if you screw up, if you don't show up, or if your gear's broken, or if you get the bridge of enough tunes, or you don't read the music well enough, you're not prepared, then you're gonna get fired, and you're not going to get the chance to do that gig again. And I'm just wondering, like, what the thing I miss about not going to school was not being able to talk to some old person that had been in New York for a while, just about getting hired and dealing with relationships with other musicians on that level. I mean, do you know what I'm getting at? Like, can you tell me what was different about your education here on that level?
Yeah, I think the only, hopefully this is answering the question slightly, the only thing that I can remember about that was when I was studying with Randy Johnston. Actually, he was talking about those kind of experiences of how you get into bands, and one thing that he mentioned was, I can't remember whose band it was, but there was kind of an audition process where he was one of 3 guitar players who were asked to audition, and he ended out winning and becoming part of the band. But I remember, he was telling me about ways that you could, for example, get into a band or start playing with someone that you liked, and he told the story, which you may or may not have heard, about Pat Metheny learning all of Gary Burton's music, and going up to him at several shows and introducing himself and saying, "Look, I know all of your music, I'm a huge fan, I'd love to play with you." And he did that quite a few times, and then at one gig he decided to let him get up and play, and he played with the band and knew all of the repertoire and absolutely killed it, and then he was hired after that. So Randy suggested not to maybe copy in those footsteps, but it takes that kind of commitment and dedication to get it. Just to simply
because there's so many
get a
people
gig.
that want a gig.
Exactly.
And so many of them are on that level that me and Matt McMahon and Kevin Hunt are. There's a lot of people who have the skills together to do a gig really well.
Exactly.
So it's more than beyond that.
Exactly. Yeah,
so
you
how
definitely.
Do you solve that problem?
Yeah, it's being a good musician is not enough. Unfortunately, it's just it's really not enough. And I think something else that definitely helps out. I just did a residency at the Kennedy Center, and Kevin Struthers, who does the booking and the organizing for the Kennedy Center, says that there's some people in the jazz world that he won't work with who are really, really famous, but they're assholes, and he doesn't want to work with them because. So I think that's something as well as being a good player. You want to be nice. You want to turn up on time. You want to be organized. You don't want to lose your music. I think those little 1%ers add up to. You want to be a good person to hang around with if you're going to go on tour with people. You don't want to be, a diva in any way. So I think there's those kind of things really come into play as well, more than perhaps you would think. So, yeah.
So, but that is something that you've been just sort of learning a bit on the.
I guess
on
so.
The fly.
Yeah, on the fly here and there. So. Yeah.
And so, what in terms of how your goals have changed? What are your goals now in terms of the future?
I think
for your career or your playing or.
Yeah, I think definitely. Well, playing wise. I'm always wanting to improve, checking out different styles of music, different musicians on different instruments, not just the guitar, but obviously the guitar as well. I take composition really, really seriously. I'd say that's 50% or maybe even more of what I'm about, especially because I like leading my own band and doing that kind of thing. So there's that artistic goal of continuing that, and I don't feel like I'll ever be done with that. But in terms of my career goals, I think that's definitely changed since I've been here. I think my penultimate goal to hopefully do is to just be able to, I think, have New York as my home base and gig here, but go on regular tours in Europe and Australia and Japan, Korea. There's a lot of opportunities that are coming up now, and I feel I don't think I could imagine anything better than touring around, sharing music with people around the world. I think that would be really amazing. So that's my ultimate, and to be able to make a living out of doing just that.
So how do you achieve that?
How do you achieve that? That's the question. Yeah, that's the tricky question.
But anyway,
yeah.
What do you think? How are you going to do it?
How am I going to do it?
Yeah. What are the steps?
What are the steps? I mean...
You write this down.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to wipe it out too.
Yeah. Well, I think... I don't know. Without going into too much detail, like definitely having a product, having CDs and things like that is really important. Developing an audience in some kind of way. There needs to be people out there to listen to your music. Also developing your contacts. I mean, us as Australians coming to another country, we're automatically international artists to some degree because we have those connections back in Australia, and I feel like they're important to keep. The thing that sucks about Australia though is that it's really far away from everywhere. It's incredibly expensive to get to, incredibly expensive to tour around. But yeah, I think just utilizing any sort of connections that you could possibly have, like even and here, like at Purchase College, there was a bass player that I played with who lived in Europe, and so yeah, I think any of those kind of connections, because the community here is so international, any of those connections, you don't know when they're going to come into play in the future. So yeah.
And you think it's realistic for you to be able to bring a whole band around the world? Do you think that's a goal that you can realistically achieve?
I think so. I mean, yeah, I hope so. Yeah, I'm just about to tour Australia, and that is partly funded by the Australia Council for the Arts, which I guess that makes that possible to be able to do. But yeah, I think in other countries like Europe and Japan, I think there is quite a bit of money involved. Like, you're not going to be a millionaire or something like that, but I think there is enough money at festivals and things like that to be able to make it work. One of the things that I've been thinking about though is that so I like to perform with a quintet: saxophone, guitar, piano, bass, drums, and I think that logistically that might be hard to do. I know that that's not many people tour with that many musicians. Yeah. So I feel like that might be a hurdle to come over to somehow get over at some stage. So
you might write some music for a smaller band, I think, or
yeah, I haven't really I haven't thought much about that, but yeah, I guess so.
make a guitar trio record.
Yeah, that's definitely an option.
Possible.
Yeah, but I also feel like I can't remember who told me this, but I feel like, because there's a lot of people in the music industry who sort of say that everything's hard and like it's impossible to do and etc. etc. But yeah, I feel like that's not a good mindset to be in when you're trying to do things. So yeah, I try and think that it's possible and not even question that it's not going to be possible. But yeah, that totally might be an option to pare down the band depending on what opportunities are available. So yeah.
Well, maybe those. I mean, you talk to those old people like John Abercrombie, and maybe the opportunities have really dwindled and the money has dwindled, and so
that's true.
They get a different perspective about that. Yeah. So tell me about Can you describe the difference between the hang at university in Australia and the hang at university in America? Is there a difference? There is a difference. I mean, it could have been because of the different circles of friends that I was with in each, but I feel like here, not that everyone is more serious, but I definitely felt like people are more interested in getting things going and doing things, and like things. When I was at Purchase, people were always wanting to play sessions and setting things up, and we were playing literally every day. Whereas I feel like in Australia that did not happen at all. Were there more bass players at Purchase than there were in Adelaide?
Yes, there was.
How many bass players were there at Purchase? That you could have asked to do a session on a Friday morning?
A bunch. I mean, yeah, I'd say at least 4 or 5 really good ones that would know a lot of tunes and that were.
But maybe there was one in Adelaide.
Exactly.
And he'd already played a session on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and he wanted to have Thursday off, please, because he didn't want to do something else that didn't pay any money, and he wanted to go fishing one day a week.
That's it. I feel like so it's probably for 2 reasons. One is that reason that there's just not as many good musicians there, so it makes it harder for that kind of thing to happen because there's just not as many of them. And then the other thing is definitely money-wise, because as you both know, gigging in New York, there's not a lot of money in it. Like literally, there isn't a lot of money in it, and so people are. But because people know that, then it seems people are still motivated to do things and they still want to play. So that doesn't become an issue. But I definitely, even myself, when I used to live in Adelaide, if I was offered a gig that didn't pay very well, I'd totally think twice about it, and I'd think about how much time was involved and whether or not I would want to do it. Which I guess is not a good mindset to be in. You should be thankful that you have work and do it. So yeah.
So you felt that people were more focused on their career, and I mean the stakes are a lot higher, aren't they?
Yeah.
For a lot of people are paying a lot of money to go to university, and there's no health insurance, and you know it's hard to get a gig that pays, and so you really have to mean business from the get-go in a place like that, right? Compared to, it's a little bit easier in Australia, maybe. It was when I was there, anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, I had the same experience you had, that I was working in first year. I mean, I almost used to go to the music school as a place to go and sleep because I was working a lot. You know.
So Canberra, at that time, the jazz department was like a hang.
Right.
Like everyone just was there all day and shooting hoops, and because they had a basketball.
Even like musicians that were sort of Canberra musicians that weren't at school would go and hang there?
Oh, no, but I mean the scene really, especially the jazz scene, like pretty much revolved around there.
What about in Adelaide? Was that the same thing? Like, was there? But there were jazz musicians that hadn't been to school there, or that you would work with? Like
jazz musicians that... Oh, you mean in the music scene?
Yeah.
Yeah, the music scene was definitely littered with people who didn't go to university. I think definitely, like the bands that I played in, there were always people who hadn't gone to university as well. Yeah, and there definitely was a hang and a community in terms of going to university, but I feel like it wasn't centered around music as being one of the main things. Yeah.
Mm. And so socially, do you spend time with Americans or Australians, or now that you're here,
that's a good question. I think a lot of different. It's very international. The people that I hang out with. So definitely Australians. There's most of the Australians that I know I've met just since I've been here. So definitely Australians, definitely Americans, and then I know a lot of people from Europe, some people from Korea. Definitely all over the place. Israel, a lot of people from Israel. So, I'd say it's a very international crowd.
Do you eat food with those people?
Yes.
Americans and Israelis and Europeans, and you sit down and have a meal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. Well, we've talked a lot, and there's a lot of stuff we haven't talked about, but it doesn't matter. So I'll ask you one question.
Okay.
Which is, where are you going to be in 10 years' time?
Where am I going to be in 10 years' time?
And then I'm going to turn the camera off after that.
Okay, well, I will stick with my original explanation of living in New York, and it being my home base, and touring
around the world.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. My fingers are crossed for you, Quentin.
Thank you.
All the best with that.
Thanks.
All right, thanks very much for your time, and I'll see you later.